When Christopher Michael Koch wore a wig and dressed like a woman, he hoped he would be able to evade the police and get lighter terms at the embassy. That plan failed woefully. Carlo Gambino was so desperate to avoid capture that he stowed away into the United States on the SS Vincenzo Florio, a freighter that sailed from Sicily to Norfolk, Virginia. Gambino was successful and went on to establish his criminal roots. When mafia bosses and drug lords travel, they do everything within their power to avoid detection. Some travel with fake documentation, while others take more absurd routes. Let's learn their stories. Christopher Michael Koch, female disguise. In 2010, Christopher Michael Koch, the leader of the infamous Shower Posse, devised a daring plan to evade capture. He was facing mounting pressure from authorities and the looming threat of extradition to the United States on drug trafficking charges. In a move that seemed straight out of a Hollywood thriller, he chose to disguise himself as a woman. His escape attempt involved donning a wig, women's clothing, and makeup, transforming his appearance in a bid to slip through the tightening net of law enforcement. Koch's plan was to drive to the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, where he intended to surrender, hoping to negotiate terms that might be more favorable than those awaiting him in the United States. The disguise was meant to be his ticket to freedom, a way to bypass the security forces that were hot on his trail. However, despite the meticulous effort put into his transformation, the ruse was not enough to fool the vigilant eyes of the Jamaican security forces. They saw through his disguise, leading to his dramatic detention. Koch may have disguised as a woman, but the next mafia boss played Interpol by opting for different modes of transportation, including walking. Charles Lucky Luciano, sea travel. Charles Lucky Luciano, a name synonymous with the rise of organized crime in America, was a master strategist whose influence reshaped the underworld. In October 1946, Luciano embarked on a secretive journey that showcased his ability to navigate the complexities of international travel while avoiding detection. His destination was the Cuban capital of Havana, a location that would serve as a strategic base for his operations. The journey began in Naples, Italy, where Luciano boarded a freighter bound for Caracas, Venezuela. This initial leg of the trip was a calculated move, allowing him to travel under the radar and avoid scrutiny. Upon reaching Caracas, Luciano's journey took to the skies as he caught a flight to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This stop was part of a carefully orchestrated plan to further obscure his trail. From Rio de Janeiro, Luciano continued his journey by flying to Mexico City. However, the journey was far from over. The final leg of Luciano's journey involved a private plane to Camagüey, Cuba. By the time Luciano arrived in Havana, he had successfully navigated a labyrinthine route that spanned multiple countries and modes of transportation. His secret sea journeys were also business strategy, just like the case with our next mafia boss. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, sea travel. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, famously known as Scarface, was a towering figure in the history of American organized crime. In a bid to expand his operations and forge international connections, he embarked on a secret journey across the Atlantic. Under a false identity, Capone sailed to Britain. This journey was not merely a vacation, it was a strategic mission to meet with businessmen and crooks involved in the exportation of alcohol, a commodity that was the lifeblood of his criminal enterprise. During his time in Britain, Capone is believed to have visited some of the country's most prestigious golf courses, including St. Andrews, Turnberry, and Muirfield. These locations were not chosen at random. They were gathering spots for the elite, where Capone could rub shoulders with influential figures who could aid in his smuggling operations. Capone's reign during the Prohibition era as the co-founder and boss of the Chicago outfit made him a household name, synonymous with the excess and violence of the Roaring Twenties. Capone's empire was built on the illegal trade of alcohol, and his operations were as vast as they were lucrative, reportedly generating $100 million annually at their peak. Capone's influence was not confined to the United States, just like the next mafia boss on our list who was established in multiple regions, including Italy. Vito Genovese, air travel. Vito Genovese was an Italian-born American mafioso who rose to prominence as the leader of the Genovese crime family in New York City. In 1937, facing the threat of murder charges in the United States, Genovese made a bold decision to flee the country. His escape was not a hasty retreat, but a carefully planned operation that involved air travel, a method that offered both speed and the ability to cover great distances with relative ease. Genovese's destination was Italy, a country where he could leverage his connections and influence to secure a safe haven. Genovese's flight to Italy was a strategic move, allowing him to evade the clutches of American law enforcement while positioning himself in a country where he could continue to exert his influence. During World War II, Genovese's opportunism came to the fore as he briefly supported Benito Mussolini's fascist regime. This alliance was not born out of ideological alignment, but rather a calculated effort to avoid deportation back to the United States, where he would face the murder charges that loomed over him. While Vito enjoyed secret air travel, the next mafia boss preferred to be a stowaway on the sea. Carlo Gambino, sea travel. Carlo Gambino was a Sicilian crime boss whose influence shaped the landscape of the American Mafia. On December 23, 1921, Gambino embarked on a daring voyage that would alter the course of his life. He entered the United States as a stowaway on the SS Vincenzo Florio, a freighter that sailed from Sicily to Norfolk, Virginia. This method of sea travel was fraught with risk, yet it was emblematic of Gambino's willingness to take bold steps to secure his future. By arriving undetected, Gambino was able to lay the groundwork for his eventual rise to power within the Mafia. Gambino's choice to stow away on a freighter was not merely a means of transportation, but a calculated decision that reflected his resourcefulness and determination. Once in the United States, Gambino quickly established himself within the criminal underworld, leveraging his Sicilian roots and connections to ascend the ranks. As Gambino's influence grew, so did his ability to orchestrate complex operations that spanned continents. Gambino's life of crime continued until his death from natural causes on October 15, 1976, at his Massapequa home. Gambino went on to live out his days after his successful escape, but the next Mafia boss on our list was recaptured after a Google Street View image of him surfaced. Gioacchino Gammino, air travel. Gioacchino Gammino, a name that strikes fear and intrigue, was a notorious figure within the Sicilian Mafia landscape. After escaping from a Roman prison, he embarked on a daring escape plan that involved air travel. His destination was Spain, a country where he could blend into the local population and continue his life under a new identity. His time in Spain was marked by a transformation as he assumed a new identity and began working as a grocer under a fake name. Gammino's ability to live an ordinary life while being one of Italy's most wanted criminals was a reflection of his ability to adapt and blend into his surroundings. His choice of a modest profession allowed him to maintain a low profile, avoiding the scrutiny that a more conspicuous lifestyle might have attracted. Despite his efforts to remain hidden, Gammino's past eventually caught up with him. His arrest marked the end of a life defined by evasion and deception, bringing to a close a chapter in the history of the Sicilian Mafia. Despite his recapture, Gammino never snitched on his crime partners, unlike the next Mafia boss on our list. Tommaso Buscetta, air travel. Tommaso Buscetta, a high-ranking Italian mobster and a member of the Sicilian Mafia, was a figure whose life was marked by intrigue, betrayal, and a constant struggle for survival. He was eventually arrested for his crime. Buscetta's life took a dramatic turn when he was granted conditional freedom, a development that allowed him to flee Italy and return to Brazil, a country where he had previously established a foothold. Within days of his release, Buscetta utilized air travel to make his way back to Brazil, a move that underscored his understanding of the importance of mobility and the ability to quickly relocate. In Brazil, Buscetta resumed his operations, leveraging his connections and influence to maintain his position within the Mafia. However, his freedom was short-lived. In 1983, Buscetta was arrested once again, marking another chapter in his tumultuous life. Buscetta's story took another significant turn when he decided to cooperate with authorities, becoming one of the first high-profile Mafia informants. His decision to turn state's evidence was a watershed moment in the fight against organized crime, providing law enforcement with unprecedented insight into the inner workings of the Mafia. The next person on our list wasn't a Mafia boss, but he was one of the greatest drug lords in history. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, solo air travel. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, a name that conjures images of wealth, power, and ruthless ambition, was a Colombian drug lord whose influence and operations left an unforgettable mark on the world. In 1975, Escobar began to develop his cocaine trade. Demonstrating his audacity and resourcefulness, Escobar took to the skies himself, piloting planes to transport cocaine between Colombia and Panama. This hands-on approach allowed him to maintain control over his operations and ensure that his shipments reached their destinations without interference. Escobar's decision to fly solo was a strategic one. By personally overseeing the transportation of his cocaine, he minimized the risk of betrayal and ensured that his operations remained under his direct control. The use of solo air travel also provided Escobar with the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. By piloting his planes, he could quickly alter his routes to avoid detection by law enforcement, a crucial advantage in the high-stakes world of drug trafficking. Despite his success, Escobar's reign was not without challenges. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was killed in Medellin, Colombia, by members of Search Bloc, the Colombian Special Forces. Escobar's ruthless ambition led to his downfall, just like the next story we will be talking about. Gilberto José Rodríguez Orejuela, car travel. Gilberto Jose Rodriguez Orejuela, a name synonymous with the rise of the Cali cartel, was a Colombian drug lord whose operations rivaled those of his infamous counterpart, Pablo Escobar. Unlike the flamboyant and often luxurious displays of wealth associated with many drug lords, Rodriguez Orejuela opted for a more understated approach. He mobilized in a modest car, a choice that allowed him to blend into his surroundings and avoid attracting unwanted attention. It was a strategic decision designed to minimize the risk of detection by law enforcement. Rodriguez Orejuela's car travel methods were complemented by a small security convoy that included women, another tactic that further helped to deflect suspicion. By surrounding himself with a seemingly innocent entourage, he was able to move through both urban and rural areas with relative ease, maintaining the appearance of a legitimate businessman rather than a notorious drug lord. This low-profile approach extended beyond Colombia's borders. In 1984, Rodriguez Orejuela's arrest in Spain revealed the extent of his operations and his ability to move seamlessly across international boundaries. Gilberto took advantage of cars. The next person on our list took to the skies on the behest of his mother. Frank Lucas, air travel. Frank Lucas, an American drug lord who rose to prominence in Harlem, New York City during the late 1960s and early 1970s, was a figure whose innovative methods left a lasting impact on the drug trade. His air travel methods played a pivotal role in his ability to bypass traditional routes and establish a direct connection to the source of his product. Lucas wanted to break free from the constraints imposed by the Mafia's French Connection, a network that controlled the flow of heroin into the United States. Lucas took the bold step of traveling to Southeast Asia, particularly Thailand, to purchase heroin directly from its source in the Golden Triangle. This approach allowed him to import heroin of higher purity and at a lower cost, giving him a competitive edge in the lucrative drug market of New York City. At the behest of his mother, who feared for his safety, he fled to New York City with a false identity on a plane. Despite his success, Lucas's reign was not without challenges. His innovative smuggling techniques eventually attracted the attention of law enforcement. Lucas was exposed by his luxurious lifestyle, but the next crime lord on our list became overly ambitious, leading to his downfall. Akbar Prey, road transportation. Akbar Prey was not just a drug kingpin, but a master of road transportation. Born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, Prey's journey from a writer and columnist to a notorious drug lord is as riveting as it is shocking. Prey's operations were meticulously planned, with a fleet of vehicles at his disposal to transport his illicit goods. He traveled extensively throughout the United States, making deals and arranging for the seamless transportation of narcotics. His network spanned from the bustling streets of Newark to the far reaches of the country, ensuring a steady flow of drugs to his eager clientele. Prey's ambitions were not confined to the United States alone. His travels extended beyond national borders, reaching into the heart of Colombia and the sun-drenched islands of the West Indies. Prey had a successful reign that eventually came to an abrupt end on January 12, 1990, when he was sentenced under the federal drug kingpin statute to life in prison without parole. While Prey's preferred method of transportation was by road, our next drug lord invested in moving in motor vessels. Jose Figueroa Agosto, motor vessels. Jose Figueroa Agosto, infamously known as Junior Capsula, was a Puerto Rican drug lord who mastered the art of secret travel through the use of motor vessels. Agosto and his team were responsible for orchestrating the movement of vast quantities of narcotics into Puerto Rico. The choice of motor vessels was a calculated decision, allowing them to navigate the Caribbean waters with ease and discretion. These vessels, often disguised as luxury yachts, were equipped with state-of-the-art technology to avoid radar detection and were manned by skilled crews who knew the waters intimately. The use of private motor vessels provided a level of mobility and secrecy that was unmatched, enabling Agosto to maintain a steady supply of drugs to his network. They didn't come cheap, but were worth the investment for Agosto. His transporters spared no expense in purchasing the finest vessels available, ensuring that their operations remained under the radar. Agosto's empire was not built on transportation alone. His success in the drug trade was bolstered by solid connections to other traffickers and influential government officials, including a presidential candidate. Just like Agosto, our next criminal mastermind was able to establish himself in the international scene by making alliances with other criminal organizations. Surindi Quant, pipeline travel. Surindi Quant, a name synonymous with the notorious No Limit Soldiers gang, emerged from the Caribbean island of Curaçao, a former colony of the Netherlands. Quant's rise to power in the cocaine trade was marked by his innovative approach to smuggling, utilizing pipeline travel to establish a formidable drug trafficking network. His operations began in the early 2000s, with the strategic smuggling of small quantities of cocaine on flights from the Caribbean to Europe. This method allowed Quant to test the waters, gradually expanding his reach and influence across continents. influence. The no-limit soldiers under Quant's leadership became a dominant force in the trafficking of cocaine from the Dutch Antilles to the Netherlands. By leveraging these connections, Quant ensured a steady flow of narcotics into Europe, cementing his position as a key player in the international drug trade. In October 2012, Quant's ambitions led him to travel through a pipeline to Jamaica, where he sought to establish an international drug pipeline in Montego Bay. Quant's time in Jamaica was short-lived, however, as law enforcement agencies were hot on his trail. In April 2013, he was arrested by police in St. Anne, Jamaica, marking a significant blow to his operations. Quant focused primarily on establishing his empire in Europe. The next boss we would be talking about set his sights on Michoacan. Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, air travel. Nazario Moreno Gonzalez was a Mexican drug lord whose influence extended far beyond the borders of Michoacan. This cartel, headquartered in Michoacan, became notorious for its ruthless operations and Gonzalez's charismatic yet brutal leadership. Gonzalez's method of secret travel was as bold as his reputation. To evade prosecution on drug trafficking charges, he boarded a plane and traveled to Mexico. It was a strategic maneuver to maintain control over his empire while avoiding capture. Despite his efforts to remain elusive, Mexican authorities were relentless in their pursuit. In the town of Tumbiscadio, Michoacan, Gonzalez's luck ran thin. Mexican authorities, acting on intelligence, located him and attempted to apprehend the elusive drug lord. The authorities' determination to capture him was fueled by the Mexican government's decision in 2009 to publish a list of its 37 most wanted drug lords. Gonzalez's name prominently featured on this list, accompanied by a staggering $2.2 million reward for information leading to his capture. Gonzalez was a terror in Mexico, but the next criminal we will be talking about dominated Newark. Anthony Tumac Axaturo, air travel. Anthony Tumac Axaturo was a mobster whose cunning use of air travel enabled him to navigate the treacherous waters of the underworld. Axaturo preferred air travel. By using air travel under another name, he managed to move to Newark undetected, where he quickly rose to become the leader of a large street gang. This move was a calculated step to expand his influence and consolidate power within the criminal underworld. His ability to operate under an alias allowed him to maintain a low profile, avoiding the prying eyes of law enforcement while orchestrating his illicit activities. However, Axaturo's operations in Newark would eventually attract unwanted attention. As investigations into his gambling operations intensified, he made the strategic decision to relocate to Florida. This move was another example of his adept use of air travel to evade capture and continue his criminal enterprises. By relocating, Axaturo was able to distance himself from the ongoing investigation and protect his interests from potential legal repercussions. While he tried his best to remain elusive, Axaturo's criminal activities eventually caught up with him. In December 1994, he was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years in prison. Axaturo's grave mistake was diving into gambling, but the next boss on our list got caught when he went fishing. Francisco Javier Arellano Felix, tunnels travel. Francisco Javier Arellano Felix was a formidable Mexican drug lord who, alongside his brothers, founded and led the infamous Tijuana cartel, also known as the Arellano Felix organization. One of the most ingenious methods employed by Francisco and his cartel was the use of tunnels for secret travel and transportation of narcotics. These tunnels, meticulously dug from Tijuana, Baja California, into the United States at Otay Mesa, California, served as a clandestine route for moving vast quantities of cocaine. Equipped with ventilation systems and lighting, these underground passages allowed the cartel to transport drugs undetected, bypassing traditional border security measures. The use of tunnels provided the Arellano Felix organization with a significant advantage, enabling them to maintain a steady flow of cocaine into the lucrative U.S. market. Despite their success, the Arellano Felix organization's reign was not without challenges. On August 16, 2006, Francisco Javier Arellano Felix's luck ran out when he was captured by Coast Guardsmen aboard the USCGC Monsoon. He was apprehended while fishing on the Dock Holiday, approximately 25 kilometers off the coast of Baja California Sur. Felix was captured by the Coast Guard while fishing, but the next crime boss we will be talking about was identified by a federal border guard. Marat Yakovlevich Balagula, air travel. Marat Yakovlevich Balagula, a Russian-American organized crime figure, carved a niche for himself in the annals of the underworld through his strategic use of air travel. In 1977, Balagula made a pivotal move that would shape the course of his life. He relocated with his family to the United States by plane, a journey that marked the beginning of his ascent in the world of organized crime. His plan was to expand his operations and capitalize on the opportunities available in the U.S. Once in the United States, Balagula quickly established himself as a formidable crime boss. He became a close associate associate of the Lucchese and Colombo crime families, two of the most powerful mafia organizations in the country. His connections with these families provided him with the resources and protection needed to expand his criminal empire. Unfortunately, Balagula's criminal activities eventually attracted the attention of international law enforcement agencies. On February 27, 1989, his past caught up with him when he was recognized from an Interpol red notice by an agent of the Federal Border Guard. Just like Balagula, the next criminal mastermind on our list also got into trouble with the authorities when he decided to expand to the United States. Jose Miguel Battle Sr., air travel. Jose Miguel Battle Sr., a figure of immense influence in the world of organized crime, was the mastermind behind the corporation, also known as the Cuban Mafia. Battle's story begins with his move to Lima, Peru, where he opened a casino in the prestigious Hotel Crillon. This venture was not just a business opportunity, but a strategic foothold in the South American gambling market. The casino served as a front for his illicit activities, allowing him to launder money and expand his influence in the region. Despite his success in Peru, Battle eventually decided to return to the United States. He moved back to his $1.5 million ranch, El Zapotal, located in Homestead, Florida, south of Miami. This move was facilitated by air travel under a different name. The ranch became the center of his operations in the United States. From here, Battle continued to oversee his criminal empire, which spanned across the Americas. As the nominal leader and founder of the corporation, Battle's influence extended far beyond the gambling industry. However, Battle's reign was not without its challenges. On May 6, 2006, he pleaded guilty to racketeering charges and would go to prison for his crimes. Battle wasn't the first or last mafia to travel by air using fake documentation, as you'll see shortly. Griselda Blanco Restrepo, air travel. Griselda Blanco Restrepo, often referred to as the Black Widow or the godmother of cocaine, was a Colombian drug lord. In 1964, following her divorce from Trujillo, Blanco made a bold move that would set the stage for her future endeavors. She illegally entered the United States using an airplane. Armed with fake documentation and traveling under an assumed name, this secret entry allowed her to settle in Queens, New York, with her 3 children and her second husband, Alberto Bravo, who was a cocaine smuggler for the Medellin cartel. Blanco's operations quickly expanded, and she became a prominent figure in the cocaine-based drug trade and the underworld of Miami during the 1970s through the early 2000s. Unfortunately, Blanco's life was fraught with danger and violence. Her operations were marked by a level of brutality that was unmatched, and her willingness to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to her empire made her a feared figure in the criminal underworld. Blanco's reign came to a violent end on September 3, 2012, when she was assassinated. While the Black Widow managed to evade authorities and start a new life, the last criminal on our list got captured at an airport. Alfonso Caruana, air travel. Alfonso Caruana, a name synonymous with the Sicilian Mafia's global reach, was an Italian-Canadian crime boss whose strategic use of air travel facilitated his rise in the criminal underworld. His journey began in 1968 when he traveled by airplane to Montreal, Quebec, Canada, arriving with just $100 in his pocket and posing as an electrician. Caruana's humble beginnings belied the significant role he would come to play in the international drug trade. Caruana's move to Canada was a calculated step to establish a foothold for the Sicilian Cuntrera Caruana Mafia clan's operations in North America. As the head of the clan's Canadian branch, he orchestrated a sophisticated network for cocaine trafficking and money laundering that spanned continents. His operations were marked by a level of precision and secrecy that allowed him to evade law enforcement for years, solidifying his reputation as a formidable figure in organized crime. Despite his careful planning, Caruana's activities eventually attracted the attention of international authorities. In a dramatic turn of events, he was stopped at the International Airport of Zurich, Switzerland, with $600,000 in a suitcase, marking the end of his era. Thanks for watching. Check out more cards on your screen.